And here we are, it's day 6 at Château de Razac's Manoir. Richard's on the roof and he is slowly removing the battens from the old roof and pulling out the old rock wall insulation. The Velux roof lights that you see here will be removed and replaced with newer Veluxes that are more in keeping with the chateau's traditional appearance. We will end up having 2 Velux here rather than 3, and they will have central glazing bars on them to comply with the Historic Buildings Department or Bâtiments de France. And as you can see, there's some rather large chunks coming off the roof, and we have Billy here sorting out some good tiles, ones that we'll be able to reuse at a later date on one of the other properties. And there goes the battens. The thing about Razac is its beautiful views, and you can see the skyline here. We've got the pigsties to the left, the old cow stable, a small studio cottage which would have been used for the shepherds, and what was once the old milking parlour. And out at the front of the chateau, we've got Alan on the brush cutter. Basically what we're trying to do here is just day by day, week by week, month by month, slowly start to clear some of the gardens back, eventually bringing the outside of Château de Razac back to its former glory. Here the brush cut is being used to clear the 3 or 4 steps that come down from the terrace to the front garden. This is a plant called Hypericum hyperformum or St. John's wort. It's used traditionally in herbal medicine for anxiety and depression. It has a beautiful yellow flower, and when in bloom it will really light up the south side of the garden. It can also be infused into an oil and used for neuropathic pain, things like shingles and any nerve-related pain. It's absolutely fantastic for, so you can use it as an oil, rub it onto the skin, and it's really beneficial. There are some really good studies to back up its evidence as well, which is always good for confirmation that the plant has active components and constituents. In daylight for probably at least 20 years. So when we eventually get to them, it's going to be quite interesting to see what the state of the stone is. And I guess at some point when we start to really focus on repairing the garden, we will see about getting Richard in, our stonemason, to assist with the repair of some of the stone and making it look much more presentable. There's a fair amount of elbow grease that's going into this. Alan's doing a great job, and it's fantastic to have somebody helping us who has just as much passion to the site as we do ourselves. And there we have it. We have our steps, which will need repairing, but it works for us for now, taking us up to the front door. And here we are at the back of the chateau. The roof directly in front is the one that's going to be renewed. And as we come back to the manoir, we can see the front of the manoir roof with its new battens, almost ready for tiling. This is where two of the roofs join together, so the manoir to the left and the what we call the east wing, which is where the living room is. And it's all looking very neat and tidy. You can see here the membranes being put on, then the timbers, and then the battens. And this is what will keep the manor dry and warm, and also cool in the summer. And here we are back outside the chateau garden, and as you can see, there is an awful lot of bramble and overgrowth here. This is the boundary between the formal garden and the lower walled vegetable garden. Our aim here is to slowly remove the bramble and try to expose the cobblestones that we have found where the bench is. We're hoping that these stones go right the way along, and we should be able to have a really nice definition between the two gardens. Obviously, there's also a 10 to 15 foot drop. So at some point we probably will have to put some form of fence or protection along here, so that when we have our guests arriving, and if there are young children, then they're not going to just jump off the edge. So the garden to the left here used to be very formal. It was a formal rose garden, and that's something that has been lost over time. I'd like to recreate that. However, I did do various rose cuttings over the spring, and out of about 30, I think I got 3 new cuttings. However, it's something and it's a start. We'll see where we go. What we've got here is the roof of the potting shed. So the potting shed is at the lower level, and at some point we will be reconstructing that. It does need to come down and be rebuilt. And here we have it, the cobbles that are on top of the wall that would have been once the foundations of the original fort of Château de Razac. The chateau was set much further forward originally. It was a much larger fortification, and its purpose was to serve and protect the town of Thiviers. We do have some underground caves here which are still accessible and were used as wine cellars. However, a proportion of them did collapse about 30 years ago and were filled in by the previous owner. But as we pan round, you'll see the wonderful chateau as we know it today.